another installment in our series of Building the Champions Mindset, where we work to bring people on who are able to contribute, to invest, and to give you their wisdom and knowledge in creating the all around leader that can help elicit greatness in others. Building a champion's mindset is about education, it's about learning, and having the resources of growth available to you through this program is what we strive to do. Before I introduce my next guest, I'll give you a little bit of background. 15 years as an athletic academic advisor, passionately working with student athletes, 8 of which were spent at East Mississippi Community College in Scuba, Mississippi. And all it took were the last 2 years of her tenure to change her life forever at EMCC. Friends, I'm so excited to be with the real star of Last Chance U from Netflix, and that is Miss Brittany Wagner. Brittany, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm so excited you got on the show. This is a special treat for us.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is fun.
I get way too many coaches and players, and this way I'm able to get a totally different perspective from somebody who gets to see everything at 30,000 feet.
Yeah. No offense to coaches, but academic
Absolutely.
advisors are better.
You were a good coach, so let's not take that away.
Thank you.
So I think it's important we put this out there at the beginning. I cannot tell you during the 2 seasons how many times I would have given anything after a bad day to go into Miss Wagner's office. It just seemed to me like it was the place where you could be honest, vulnerable, and even feel nurtured in one special place. And what was so inspiring is when there'd be 3 or 4 players or even 5. Your office wasn't big enough, but they would all be sharing in a conversation, and your smile was just radiating. And I felt that room was their safe place. And I just love that. I mean, do you ever look upon those moments today and still beam with pride, knowing how they felt about you in that special room?
Yeah, I do. I miss that. If people ask me all the time, do I miss it? And I miss that. I miss those interactions with the players in the office. And that was on purpose. And I think that sometimes is where a lot of counselors, advisors, even coaches, teachers maybe get it wrong, is that we think about our office being a space for us. And so we make it comfortable for us because it's our office. And in making it comfortable for us, we make it uncomfortable for any student to walk in. And it took me a while to learn that, to figure that out. Early in my career, my office was kind of stuffy. It wasn't filled with the pictures of players like it was on the show, or the paraphernalia from all the schools. It was real, decorated and kind of stuffy. I usually had my door closed. And so, you had to knock and be invited in to come into my space. And I started realizing that that wasn't an inviting space, and the players were very uncomfortable coming to me because of that. I made it uncomfortable. And so I got really deliberate in making a space that maybe I wasn't as comfortable in, but that they were comfortable in, so that they would come hang out in my office. And I started allowing their music to play, and if you come in how you are, just show up how you are. And I'm the adult in the relationship, so I'll be the one that has to deal and has to kind of figure it out. But it's important, if you want to build relationships with those students, then it's important to allow them to come in however they are feeling that day, and just be safe in that space. And so that was a deliberate move on my part. It worked. And it was fun, and it became really fun for me. And honestly, at the end of it, I was more comfortable in that space too, because of them, because of how they changed me.
And I think they would motivate each other. When you would speak to one, you may have thought their headphones were in and probably not listening, but they listened to every word you said. And I know it provided a positive influence for them, because it may have been a question they were afraid to ask. And when they hear the answer to somebody else, they may take it to heart and act.
Right. Well, and also knowing that they're not alone. I think a lot of times athletes walk into situations thinking like, well, I'm the only one that doesn't have a computer and all of the resources that I need, or I'm the only one that have only ate one meal a day my whole life, and that was the free lunch I had in the lunch cafeteria. I'm the only one who doesn't understand this assignment and how to complete it. And you think that, and you think you're isolated and alone, and therefore you're less than, when the reality is you're not alone, and more people are feeling the way that you're feeling. We're just not sharing it, we're not talking about it. And so when you can get more than one athlete in a space and you can start to get them to open up and talk and share their own stories, they start to realize that they're not alone, and there's the more people that are experiencing the same thing they're experiencing than they thought, which makes them feel comfortable.
What a great environment. Now, on rare occasions, in your office especially, you did show some emotion. I can imagine that you have to hold it in a lot, because in your 15 years in your role, it's got to be difficult to maintain that constant, positive, energetic, empowering person that you have to be for those student athletes. And for the most part, most of those student athletes have never really had an authority figure. So for you, someone who is willing to invest in their future, how difficult was it for you to sometimes want to break down on the inside, but you knew you had to keep your composure and have a straight face?
It was really difficult, if I'm being honest. It's, you're frustrated, and you're not only, I said it, there's a line in the show, I think it's season 2, where I say, I don't have a problem with the athletes, it's the adults that I work with that stress me out the most. And you didn't see a lot of that in the show, but I may be stressed out about a meeting that I just left out of, and I'm mad and angry and stressed, but I walk in an office and I've got 5 players waiting on me to help them, and I've got to be able to contain my emotions and be on and be ready at all times. And it was hard. I wasn't great at it every day. Some days were better than others. I got better at it as I got older and wiser and more experienced in the job. But there were moments, where I had to, even filming the show, there were moments where I had to say, hey, cut, take my mic off and I would go get in my car and just drive around the country roads of Scuba for 10 to 15 minutes to kind of get myself in a better mindset. I still have a few of them, but I had a lot of stress balls, and I would squeeze them under my desk, even while filming. You may not see that. I always had essential oils going in my office. I mean, I had a whole lot of tricks to try to keep myself mentally stable and mentally there for the guys. But I mean, it wasn't easy. It was always a work in progress. People have asked me, what's the biggest misconception that the world has of you? And I think that's it, that I was always happy and stable and patient and perfect. And that's such a lie. I mean, there's no way you can work in college athletics and maintain that, that attitude all the time. It's impossible.
It also seems in the seasons that you were involved with that they needed a story arc, obviously. And we saw so many stories of somebody going from obstacle to opportunity. But in reality, let me ask you, I know there's a lot we didn't see. Is it what we saw, or are there so many that just don't make it through that system?
There were a lot in our case. I think we had a great balance with football and books. We had a great location. Being out in the middle of nowhere, it was a lot harder for our guys to get in trouble. I mean, we kind of had a really good system. And so most of our guys made it through our place. They made it out of East Mississippi. There weren't a whole lot of failures there. Now, they're not all success stories, though. I mean, they all didn't make it through the next level. They all didn't get an opportunity to play at the next level. They all aren't what we would say is successful now. There were definitely heartbreaks and failures. And honestly, you saw 2 of them, DJ Law and Isaiah Wright. Those weren't success stories. They weren't really success stories on the show, honestly. And they're still not success stories. Neither one of them have really figured it out yet. And that's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to to know what's on the other side, and really, and a lot of times I felt like I wanted it for the players more than they did,
Yeah.
because I knew what the outcome would be and they hadn't learned that yet. And it's heartbreaking when you're working to try to help and try to instill that in them, and then time runs out.
Yeah.
and you just have to hope that somebody else will pick up the ball and move them to the next stage, and that it'll end up clicking at some point. But look, I had a mentor that told me one time, it's, Brittany, it's not impossible, but it's really hard to change what learned behavior of 18 years into. It's very difficult to change it in 4. It feels almost impossible to change it in 2. So don't beat yourself up. Like you got to do the best you can, and really pull for each kid, but you're not gonna save everybody.
Oh, and coming from the SEC and going to a JUCO, there are even more disadvantages walking in. For the majority of those athletes, they're walking in confused. They're walking in a situation of maybe a little bit of frustration. When they were walking in the SEC, the only thing they were worried about was learning the system. When you talk about you can't change much in 2, there were so many other factors that were involved in your responsibility. And you always came across to me as somebody who took pride in a calling to serve. That comes so much across in the show by the way you nurture, the way you listen, especially. And you said sometimes you felt like you cared more than they did. And that was evident in the shows. It really was. In the 2 seasons that I saw you, you did a lot of convincing. My hope is those that may not have figured it out then, when it does kick in, they're going to go back to some of the lessons that you taught them. They're going to go back to some of those mental exercises and realize people will believe in me if I do the right thing. People will push me. And I think that's all you can do, because you get that time. Yeah. And if they don't buy in, you can't do anything.
Right. And you hope that at some point they hear, I hope that at some point they hear my voice in their head. Whether it's when they're 30 or 18 or 25, I don't know, but I hope. And I've had some players come back and say, like, look, I did not like you. Like, I did not like you, and I made your job hard, and I didn't do anything you told me to do, but I heard your voice in my head for 5 years after, and it finally clicked. And so thank you for doing it anyway, even though I really pushed hard. Thank you for sticking with me and not giving up on me. And I've had enough players come back and say that I would tell myself that in those moments. I would tell myself, like, it's not clicking today, but keep planting the seed. It'll click at some point. And that was kind of how I kept myself motivated when I wasn't seeing the outcome that I wanted to see. I just would try to maintain that positivity that, one day they'll get it.
It's a confidence.
Yeah. And hopefully, for DJ and Isaiah, like, I still hold out hope, that one day it'll all click with both of them. And, and whether or not they hear my voice, I don't know, but I hope so. And I hope at some point it'll still click with them.
I'm what some may call a Pollyanna, but I always believe that there's good in people. We're all born with the same heart. And just for some, it takes a little bit longer to realize. And that's why gratitude is important to me, because it takes away stress. But more than anything, it's belief. And even if it's 2 years, by having somebody believe in you, it may not spark that fire right now, but at some point things converge and you realize, I know how to react, whereas before I didn't. And that's where I think you may never know the long-term effect, but to have the pride in knowing I did the best I could, it's going to come.
Well, we all come from different environments and different backgrounds. And, my dad used to tell me when I was starting out in this career, my dad would always tell me, Brittany, no one wakes up wanting to be a failure. So when you have a challenging situation with an athlete where they're not doing what you're wanting them to do, you're assuming that they're doing it on purpose. But that would mean they woke up wanting to be a failure, and that's not accurate. So you have to look at it from a perspective of, if they didn't wake up wanting to be a failure, if they didn't wake up today deciding that this is going to be the day that I screw it all up, then what do they not know? Like, there's something that they haven't been taught, they haven't learned, they don't know, and you have to teach them.
Right.
So rather than just, we like to just throw the towel in. Oh, well, he won't go to class. So, he doesn't care. He's not concerned about academics. He doesn't care. Well, maybe he's never really been made to put forth effort. Like maybe he's never been made to go to class and show up and held accountable in that way because he was a superstar athlete. So maybe is my sole purpose for these 2 years is to teach this kid accountability and like getting up and showing up for your own life, whether you like it or not, because that's not really the point. The point is like, here's what you have to do. So fake it till you make it, like show up.
Just figure it out as you go.
And I think that when you start to take that attitude of like, look, nobody's trying to screw it all up. They don't know how to not, and I would really try every day to take that attitude of like, look, I've got to teach them how to at least play the game, because I only have 2 years. So I gotta at least in these 2 years teach them how to play the game so that they can be successful at the next place. And then hopefully at some point it all clicks for them and they'll do it on their own because it's the right thing to do. But at first, maybe it's just playing the game. I mean, and that's okay. Like create a habit, even if it's really not something you want to do. And then hopefully eventually it all clicks with you. And so that was really my strategy and philosophy from the get-go was teach everyone how to fake it till they make it and then hope that they buy in at some point.
Right. They get the role. And I had a father with a similar saying, but he would say, when the son swears, slap the father. And his point was, don't always look to the person and say, why can't you do this? Sometimes they don't know any better. Yeah. It's their routine. It's the way they've been taught. So you have to have empathy when approaching a challenge. And it's hard as a leader sometimes to just stop for half a second and realize, maybe I need to teach this habit. Maybe I need to teach this routine and set the example. So I have to model the behavior. So I see exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. When I speak to large groups, I talk about country roads and I talk about scuba, but I talk about in dirt roads, when a truck goes down a dirt road over and over and over again, you start to get ruts in that dirt road. And then even if you want to pull your car to another part of that dirt road, it's really hard because there's already these deep tire track ruts in the dirt road. And the same is true for our brain. When we repeat a behavior over and over and over again, there become ruts in our brain, and that's our go-to. Mm-hmm. And we and as an advisor, as a teacher, as a coach, we have to pull the car over and create a different track. And that's hard, especially in the beginning, because the car wants to just keep doing what it's always done. But it's possible to retrain your brain and to create different ruts. Is it easy? Is it quick? No, but it's possible. And so, yeah, I think it starts with us really being aware of the behavior and then being patient enough to say, okay, we gotta stop that. We've got to create a different rut. We've got to create a different habit, a different go-to. And then how am I going to break that down to really a kindergarten level to get you started with the end result? You've got to start with baby steps and let it work its way up in order to redo the grooves in the brain. And it's a process, and it's not easy, and it takes a whole lot of keeping your mouth shut as the adult and not nagging and yelling and really being patient and understanding. But it works. And
for the athletes, it's no different than their skill position. There's a reason they practice and do repetition each day. It's to make a skill a habit. And the same is with mindset. I firmly believe that mental reps aren't just for the athlete. Mental reps are for everything we do. It's getting us to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So the more mental reps that they can do, maybe that rut is a little bit easier to get out of, but you just at least have to keep making that attempt. I like that analogy.
Yeah, which is why I would get so frustrated at coaches who wouldn't hold players accountable. Because you wouldn't let a receiver run a route 50 times and he's running it wrong. Like you wouldn't let that. You don't want the habit to be, you wouldn't let a defensive lineman get in a stance and go about a tackle the wrong way. You would stop him the first time he did it wrong and correct what he's doing wrong and make him repeat it correctly over and over and over again to change the habit. I saw it 100 times at the college level, where you would have a athlete not trained properly at the high school level, and they're coming in, their footwork's off, their tackling is off, and our coaches would just make them repeat it over and over and over again the right way. Well, it's the same thing with discipline. When you allow that star player to show up late, or not work out, or not go to class, or not, you're creating habits. And if you're going to correct them on the field and challenge them to do it the right way on the field, then you have to hold that same standard off the field, because you're allowing that athlete to create that habit of not being a champion all the time. And when you start in high school, not making them come to school on time, and not making them sit in class for the entire period, but letting them get up and go run around the weight room, or you're teaching them that that's okay. And then they get to college, and it works for a minute, but they're going to get to a point where it's not going to work anymore. And it's
they don't know what to do.
And it's a whole lot harder to change the habit when they're 19, 20, and they've been getting away with it for 5 years than it would have been if that coach right in the beginning would have nipped it in the bud. And I used to just get, I would ask I had a couple players that had such a problem going to class, and I would say, like, why? I wasn't made to go to class in high school because I was the star. I was a star athlete. So I'd go sit in coach's office all day, and I didn't have to go to class. And I would have such a hard time, because I wanted to call that coach and say, like, look, let me explain to you why this is not okay. Like,
your process, my outcome.
You're right. And you're not helping the athlete by having that at all. And I think coaches need to think about, if you wouldn't let them run a route wrong, then don't let them run life wrong. I mean, it's like, it's the same. Champions are champions all the time.
And we've got to create young men and young women to go out and be leaders. If we allow them to take shortcuts, if we allow them entitlement in any way, maybe at the moment we may feel cool, but it does nothing whatsoever to the future of that athlete. You're actually taking them steps back. So I relate to what you're talking about. And unfortunately, you see it a lot. You see a lot of high school athletes who have excelled at that level. And when they go onto a college squad and realize they're 4 deep with the same talent, they forget that they're a student athlete, and they dig their own ditch. And that's the problem, I think, with a lot of these kids in the transfer portal.
I say all the time, talent will take you so far. And for some of you, you've already maxed out on it.
Exactly.
Like for some of you, you've maxed out on your talent in high school. Now, does that mean you can't play at the next level? Absolutely. Because when talent takes you so far, absolutely not. Because when talent takes you so far, that's when work ethic kicks in. Mm-hmm. And some of you will sit the bench because somebody else outworked you, not because they're more talented than you. And so I think that's really important. When you show up, especially at the highest level, Power 5, you're not the star. Everybody's a 5-star, 4-star athlete. And like, your talent, you've maxed out, son. Like, now who's going to work? Because it's going to be the ones that with the work ethic and the discipline that are going to be the ones on the field. Very rarely do you have a Michael Jordan, or a Zion Williamson out there whose talent is just going to exceed everybody else's. We all sit back with social media and our access to videos now. I think athletes sit back and think like, well, yeah, I'll do that. No, you won't. Like that happens once in a lifetime. Michael Jordan comes around once in a lifetime.
Yeah. And these kids who never saw him play are like, that's not that big of a deal.
Oh, I got that. You don't got that. Like, I think that we think, and it's great to have that belief in ourselves, to think that like yes, believe in yourself, but you got to have a realistic belief. Zion Williamson and Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and that caliber of athlete, like that's a top 1% that the rest of us will never achieve, no matter how hard we try. And maybe they didn't have to go to workouts, and maybe they didn't have to really put forth 100% effort, but their talent was some crazy God-given thing that none of us have. The rest of us, you're maxing out at some level. And you better be willing to work, because otherwise that's it. That's where you'll stop. That's where you'll end.
It is. That's where the 1% add up. And they don't understand those 1%, the little things, how critical they are. It's the difference because, like you said, skill equals now I got to see will. And that
Right.
1% is
Absolutely.
all will, all
Absolutely.
will. So when I speak to high school and college student athletes, I always emphasize the importance of communication by both the player and the coach. I don't hold one responsible and not the other. In my personal opinion, it's critical to build that base of trust and authenticity on both sides. But I want to focus on the coaching side now, and especially with your experience. A lot of times, what I'll see is coaches will only see athletes for their abilities on the field, for their skills, and they don't gain that true connection. They don't create an authentic persona. They don't go beyond the talents. They don't get to find out more about the person instead of the player. How do you handle that process in your role as an academic advisor and even now in your role as consulting? When working with groups, what is the best way to earn the trust of an athlete to gain buy-in?
I think for me, one of the best things I ever did, and I learned from my own mistake. I had a player transfer from a Power Five school, got kicked out of that Power Five school, and transferred to East Mississippi. And I made the mistake of Googling him and calling the old institution and asking what his problems were. What did he do? What are his problems? I was trying, and I think it was because I lacked confidence in myself, and so I was trying to get all the information I could from a counselor, I guess, that I perceived was better than me, so that I could better service this athlete. But really, if all I got was negativity, because the kid got kicked out of there. They didn't do it right, or he would have still been there. So that was not a smart move, to call the place that screwed it up and ask them for their opinion or advice. And so after that happened, and I had all these preconceived notions, I was believing what that counselor told me, which was all negative, horrible things about this kid. And I couldn't erase what I had heard, and so every time he would walk in my office, my body language would change. I would freeze up. I was scared to death of him because of what I had heard I could not connect. I didn't want to connect. I would hear him in the hallway and I would be like, oh, please don't come in here. Please don't come in here. I was terrified of the kid because of what I had read on the internet and what I had heard from the counselor. And he was not a success story. He got kicked out of our place. I think about him all the time. I have no idea whatever happened with his life, but he was a superstar athlete that could have had a fantastic future. And so after that, I made the rule that I would never Google a player. I didn't want to know. Now, I wanted to know their story, but I wanted to know it from them. I didn't want to read it on, get it from someone else's perspective. And I had to just believe in myself that I had the ability to help this kid with my own knowledge, wisdom, experience, and I didn't need anyone else's input. Going back to that quote. Yeah. And so I started asking the players, like, hey, tell me about your high school. Tell me about your town. Tell me about your mom. My mom, and then, you would get, oh, my mom died. What? Really? How did that happen? When did that happen? And I would just start asking them for their own story. And look, when you allow someone to tell their own story, there's a trust there. And me just asking, like, hey, I want to know your story. Then there's hey, she cares about me as a person, not about the amount of touchdowns I'm scoring or how many tackles I've had or how many A's and B's I've made. And then as they tell their story too, really it changed me, because when you start to hear someone's story, if you're really listening, then things start adding up. Oh, you were abused by every man that's ever been in your life. That's why you cussed out the male math teacher. Not because you're a terrible kid, but because you have a problem with male authority, because you've been beaten by every man that's ever stood in front of you and you don't trust. So you start to connect. And so then what can I do? I cannot put you in a classroom where a male is your teacher to help you be successful. But you never get there if you don't just ask people to tell their story and then care, like listen to it. And I think the mistake a lot of coaches make is here they sit with a team full of 55, 65 players, and they think like, well, I don't have time. Like I can't sit down with 65 players individually and work on, hearing their story and getting to know them in that way. I don't have time for that. And so they start treating everyone the same. They have a philosophy, and here's my philosophy, and we're all going to fit in this box. And if you don't fit in this box, then you're gone. Well, okay, probably not going to work. Like, again,
Absolutely.
It's going to take you so far because everyone's not going to fit in that box, and everyone's doesn't respond to the same thing. Some people shut down when you yell at them. Some people yelling is motivating to them. I mean, everyone's different, and you don't know that if you're not getting to know your players. One thing that I think is a great idea for coaching staffs to do is if you have 7 coaches, 4 coaches, how many ever coaches you have, break your team up, and you got each coach has 10 players that they're responsible for. Okay, well, that coach can sit down with 10 people and like have real life conversations and get to know those players. And then that, when the head coach is not coaching one of those players the right way, that position
they can have an interaction.
Needs to say like, hey coach, can't do that to him. He's going to flip out. You're
going to know their freshman and sophomore year is probably the most time you're going to spend with them. So
right.
Even if it's 10 players, maybe 5 of them are the ones that require the most conversation. And the other 5, you're maintaining now. You're not learning. So you still have trust from all 10.
Right. I think I think the most successful coaches have a system in place where they know their kids, they know their players, and
absolutely.
And it's not some, here's me and you're going to all fit in this box. It's that military attitude. I don't think that works anymore. And when I first started in this career, 20 years ago, that's how everybody coached. It was that military, like,
there's one way. That's it.
That's it. And I think there was a time when that worked. I think time's up. Like I don't think that's as effective anymore as just really mentoring and knowing your kids and then treating each one as an individual based on their story. That for me was really key in getting to know these kids and then essentially building the trust, which led to the change and the change in their lives basically started from just, hey, tell me your story for a lot of them.
It's funny when I talk to a lot of coaches, they'll say, I don't have that much time to really get to know who they are. And I'm like, here's what you need to do. Just go through their social media and it'll just give you a little bit of a taste of who they are, who they hang out with, what they enjoy, what they're posting. Brothers and sisters, here's a family picture. Read what they write. Now, there's going to be some things you don't want to see, and you can call attention to that. But it's a great starting place. Now you have an icebreaker. Hey, I saw a picture with you and your family. Did y'all have a family reunion this weekend? Okay, you just began that connection process. Absolutely. You'll throw the person off guard because they're like, how did you know? Like, hey, I'm hip. Absolutely. I got the social media.
Yeah, I still, Ronald Ollie and I are still very close. And I'll see him tweet something and I'll think like, why is what's that about? And I'll text him and say, what was that last tweet about? And never fails. Every single time there is some big issue, like something, and he's just throwing a tidbit out in a tweet, seeing if anyone will bite. And then we get into this conversation about like what's really going on, where his head really is and how he gets out of that space. But it's still just having that awareness of the people that you care about and what they're going through.